Hello, welcome to another episode of Yvette Unplugged. Whew. It always feels like such an accomplishment to be able to sit here and record and talk to myself. I'm just kidding. I'm not talking to myself. I'm talking to y'all. I am so glad to be back. I was shooting to get this episode out on Wednesday, but Saturday just seems to be working out better for me. So until we can lock it in on Wednesday, we're just going to keep going. I don't know how many of you guys are also a part of my wedding party over at How Married Are You podcast that I co-host with my husband, Glenn Henry. But in that episode, or in those episodes, we do a segment called Chocolate Baby Story Time. And I think I kind of want to bring that over here as well. I feel like so many of the times my children are teaching me all the things. And so I wanted to share just a moment from my motherhood journey with you guys. I'm going to be sharing a bunch of those over the course of the year. But on Christmas Day, if you have not heard this story, if this is repetitive, I apologize. But on Christmas Day, my oldest son was riding his bike. It was him, myself, and Uriah. We're riding our bikes and we were going downhill. And he decided to get a little bit of I don't even know what you would call it, tenacity. And he decided to stand up on his bike. And apparently when he decided to do that, he kind of fell forward. And naturally, when we fall, we land on the palms of our hands. And so a very long story short, we come to find out that he has a buckle fracture, not just in one wrist, but in both of his wrists. So yesterday, I took him in to the orthopedist, and we found out that he was going to have to get a cast on his left hand and a brace or I forget what they call it. I think it's just a brace on his right hand or his right wrist or whatever. And it's kind of a bummer of a situation, but we were talking about it and something he said just was so dynamic to me that I was extremely proud of him. But he said something to the effect, I'm summarizing. He said something to the effect, it's not my bike's fault. It's a decision I made. And I was just like, my mom heart was so happy, just so proud in that moment to hear that, because he was able to separate a decision that he made from insert thing, right? I was a little nervous that he wasn't going to want to ride his bike anymore. But in that moment, I realized that he understood the decision he made led to an unfortunate circumstance. And so with that being said, I just wanted to share that with the rest of us, because I think sometimes we want to just throw the whole house away. We want to throw the whole thing away. But sometimes it is a decision that we've made or a lie that we've decided to believe that is untrue. And so sometimes it's not like us that needs to be completely disregarded as a whole, but it is an untruth that we are holding on to, or it is a habit that we have that needs to be shifted. And so I don't know who that is for, but I know it encouraged me. And so I decided to share it with you guys as well. How are y'all doing? How was your week? I know I can't hear your responses in this moment, but if you have not taken a moment to just kind of reflect on that, I would so encourage you to do it. It's such a powerful thing to just take a moment to reflect. Just take a moment. This week has been a very challenging week in many ways and a very sweet week in other ways. And so I'm embracing both. I think that has probably been one of the biggest lessons I'm learning in my adulthood, is that two things can be true at the same time and they don't have to compete with one another. They just are. It is what it is. That is a very true statement sometimes. And sometimes what it is, we can impact, and sometimes we cannot. But when we can, we got to do what we can. All right. Okay. So another segment of the Yvette Unplugged podcast that I did in the past when I've recorded, I would always have a Woman Crush Wednesday because I am supposed to get these episodes out on Wednesdays. However, until I can get it together, we're just going to have a woman crush. Every episode is going to have a woman crush, whether it's on a Wednesday or it's on a Saturday, it's going to be a woman crush. Okay. And so, I don't know if you guys have heard of this woman, but she is a potential client that my husband might be working with in the future. And in order to like get to know her a little bit better, he's been listening to her books that she's written on Audible. And so he's been ranting and raving about her. And I was like, oh my goodness, okay already. So I will check out the book. And I finally decided to check out, I actually downloaded it on Audible. The book is called, the book that I downloaded, which apparently was the wrong book to start with. My husband's like, you got to start with the other one. And I was like, well, I'm already into this and this is really good. But this book is called Killing Comparison, which brings me to my Woman Crush Wednesday, or my woman crush of this episode is Nona Jones. She has a book called Killing Comparison. And I think that of her two books, oh my goodness, I can't even think of the name of the other book that she wrote. Let me look it up really quick just so that I can, okay. The other, book that she wrote is called Success from the Inside Out, which I will be reading that one next because that's the one that my husband was really like, read this. I think between the two books, when I was looking on Audible and I was choosing which one to download, I chose Killing Comparison because comparison is something that I really need to kill. And so it just stood out a lot to me when I was looking at the two titles. And I've actually started following her on Instagram as well, as a result of reading this book, because I'm like, wow, she is just a very wise, insightful woman. And a lot of the things that she wrote were so relatable. She says some things in her book that I think a lot of us would be slightly embarrassed to say out loud. And so I'm only like on chapter 2. So I'm only on chapter 2. So, I mean, I've only read the first 2 chapters. So let me just put that out there right now. I have not read the entire book. Don't stone me if there's something crazy at the end. I don't think it's going to get like that. But I've only, looked at the first 2 chapters. One, I wanted to share a couple of things from what I have read so far. Something that stood out to me in the first chapter was the statement that she makes, and it says, comparison makes what never mattered before the thing that matters most. And I was like, ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? When is the last time? Okay, for example, and I don't know if this has actually happened in real life. I know I've been invited and I've been like, nah, I don't want to go. But, let's say, for example, let's just use me as an example. I am not a huge fan of musicals. I am not a huge fan of movie theaters at all. Recently, though, I did arrange for me and some girlfriends to go get together and go see The Color Purple in the movie theater because I just wanted to support the cast. That was like my main point of it. But like, if you invite me to, we have a park in our neighborhood that does musicals often. And I have a friend who enjoys going to those, and sometimes she'll invite me to go. And I think the last time she invited me to go to a musical, I was like, girl, give that ticket to somebody else who's going to appreciate it more than I would. And and so I'm saying this I'm like bringing this up because I'm not a huge fan of musicals. And so if my people know that about me and they just plan to go to a musical and they don't invite me, but my feelings get hurt because I'm like, well, why didn't I get invited? That is that's silly because it shouldn't matter that I didn't get invited when they know I don't like musicals. And so I feel like, and that's just like a petty example of something, but there are things that we make matter that don't matter to us. You know what I'm saying? I think each of us can think of an example without me going into too much detail about it. And by the end of the chapter, she gives us like a kind of a call to action, or just an opportunity to really, when we do find ourselves in the swing of comparison, to ask ourselves. And she goes, why does it matter? Why does it matter? Like when you are in that moment, she goes, I'll even read it. She goes, every time comparison makes you ask why was I left out? Why was I overlooked? Ask yourself, why does it matter? Asking this question is important because experiences that expose your insecurity are not the source of your insecurity. In other words, someone else's material possessions, appearance, or perfect relationship is not the source of your insecurity. The source of your insecurity has a history, and you must explore that history to repair the soil of your heart and prepare it for healing and freedom. Asking why does it matter has led to a groundbreaking personal insight because it forces me to be honest about what I believe to be true and why. It forced me to get at the root of my insecurity by bringing me face to face with myself and interrupting the natural downward spiral into thoughts of inadequacy that usually accompanies a toxic comparison trigger. Now, when I think I'm not good enough, pausing to consider those 4 words brings me back to myself. And I think that that is something that definitely I am going to be exploring for myself. Why does it matter? Why does it matter? Because oftentimes it really don't matter. And so I think that that question too does lead to a self-healing journey. And I don't know if you guys are in therapy or not, but it's also something like when you find yourself into these moments and taking a note of it, journaling about it, and then bringing it up in therapy so your therapist can kind of help you dig down deeper to what may be going on. But yeah, so my woman crush this week is Nona Jones. If you don't know who she is, I definitely would encourage you to go check her out. Maybe pick up her book. Maybe check it out from the library. I am not really good at that. I need to start doing better at that, checking books out from the library, because I just be buying the book. I'd be like, I should have the book. I'm going to buy it. But I am hopefully on a buying freeze in the moment. I do have a couple of friends who are coming out with books that I know they are sending my way. So I didn't buy those. Those were gifted to me. But I am going to try to read the books on my shelves before I move forward, because currently I'm reading like 4 different books. It's crazy. But anyways, I hope you guys connect with Nona Jones and see if she is someone who can, I don't know, inspire you in some way or encourage you in others. Check her out. She's cool peoples. Okay. So now we are at the topic for today. The name of this podcast is Yvette Unplugged. And when I was thinking about what to talk about today, I was like, oh, I don't think I've ever told you guys why it's Yvette Unplugged. Like, why did I decide to go with Unplugged? And I decided that today would be the day that I share that with you. I used to have a blog, and maybe some of you are familiar with it. And I still have a blog. I'm not consistent with it, but we're getting there. And my blog used to be called Mrs. Melanin Exposed. And it was me kind of exposing my thoughts and feelings and just going a little bit deeper with everyone. And when I decided to move forward with the podcast, I decided to name it. I didn't want to call it Mrs. Melanin because that's not my birth name. I wanted to call myself by name, which is Yvette. And I wanted to just call it Unplugged. And I looked up what Unplugged is in music. So Unplugged, I'm using it as a reference to music. So I'm going to read a little something to you guys really quick. Unplugged music refers to a style of musical performance where instruments are played without the use of electric amplification. And so really quick, I want to pause on that word amplification. Amplification is the process of increasing the volume of sound, especially using an amplifier, the action of enlarging upon or adding detail to a story or statement. Okay, so that's what amplification is. The term, we're referring back to Unplugged, is often associated with acoustic performances where artists use traditional non-electric instruments such as acoustic guitars, pianos, and other acoustic instruments. When I was looking more into this, they also talked about how the original acoustic instrument could be identified as your vocals, your voice. If you sing, you're singing without any sort of amplification or added anything. It's just your natural, raw voice. Unplugged sessions gained popularity in the 1990s when MTV launched its MTV Unplugged series, featuring artists performing their songs in an acoustic stripped down format. These performances aim to showcase the raw talent of musicians without the embellishments of electronic instruments or heavy production. So it's the raw talent, and if we define raw is described as strong and undisguised. Strong and undisguised, okay? These performances aim to showcase the raw talent of musicians without the embellishments of electronic instruments or heavy production. So if we look up embellishment is designed as a decorative detail or feature added to something to make it more attractive, right? To make it more attractive. In unplugged music, the emphasis is placed on the natural sound of the instruments and vocals, creating a more intimate and authentic musical experience. Creating a more intimate and authentic musical experience. It allows listeners to appreciate the subtleties and nuances of the music without the distortion or effects introduced by electronic amplification. Unplugged performances often highlight the skill of the musicians and the emotional depths of the songs in a more organic and unplugged setting. And so with that definition, I decided to name my podcast Yvette Unplugged because I want to create a space where you guys can feel seen. I wanted to create a space where I could come and unplug. I feel like so much of our society is in a place right now where we get to present our best foot forward, right? We get to decide how we're going to show up in the world. And while there is still an element of me making that decision, and while there is still an element of, I would say, polish and whatnot here, I do believe, or I'm not going to say I do believe, I am coming before you, expressing things that I am learning and growing through in order to make you feel less alone. I understand what it feels like to be alone or to feel alone, even when you're surrounded by people all the time. Many of us might be mothers. Many of us might work in an office and we're in constant communication and contact with other people. Some of us actually may be physically and emotionally lonely. There is an element of loneliness that we experience in such a way that it makes us feel unseen, and there's a lack of connection between us and others. And so as much as social media and these platforms that exist that allow us to hear from other people constantly, I do know how it feels when someone else puts into words something that I'm experiencing, but I could not yet communicate, or I did not yet have the words for that. So Yvette Unplugged is a space where I will be coming to share those things. I said something the other day, and I'll even share it here. I said something the other day and I took it down. And I took it down because I felt like it was insensitive to say such a thing when other people are experiencing what I said. And this is what I said. I was sharing how in 2023, I had reached, this is a statement that I wrote, but then I took it down. I had reached the kind of fatigue that had me wishing I would be diagnosed with a terminal illness so that I'd have an excuse to rest. I said that and it didn't settle with someone right. And so I was like, I'll take it down. Right. And then I realized upon taking it down that kind of went against my whole goal of sharing in a way that was authentic to my experience and to the potential experience of others. And I took it down because the use of the word terminal illness, there may be somebody out there right now who is experiencing a terminal illness. And I do not discredit that. And I am not insensitive to that. I was sharing the statement in a way to kind of communicate the fact that like, that's where I was. I thought the only way that I could achieve rest, or the only way that I deserved rest, or the only way that my rest would be justified is if something tragic happened to me. If I got hit by a car and had to be laid out in a hospital bed, if I got a terminal illness and I needed to rest in order to heal, or even, like, to be completely honest, I was not afraid of death. And to be completely even more honest, I am still not afraid of death. If the Lord called me home today, I would not be mad at him. I do believe that there's a lot more for me to do. I am not suicidal. I think sometimes when sharing things like that, there is a fear that people are going to think, oh, you want to take your life. And I do understand that those thoughts could lead to that type of whatever, but I'm not in a place of ideation in that way. And I'm very transparent with my therapist when I'm talking to her about where I'm at in my state of existence. But I was sharing that to say that, like, things like that is like, I don't know if there's anything that any woman can say, and honestly, any man can say, that would catch me completely off guard. I don't know if there's anything that you could say that would make me feel uncomfortable, or maybe I will feel uncomfortable, but it wouldn't make me like think any less of you. And so for me, when I am saying that this is the Yvette Unplugged podcast, I'm saying, come as you are. Come with your life experiences, come with your current emotions, your frustrations, your joys, your fun, your love. Come with all of you, because there is nothing that you have to, there's no mask that you have to wear. There's no amplification needed. There's no, what's that one thing? The auto-tune. I hate the auto-tune, y'all. The auto-tune is just like, ugh. But you know, auto-tune is kind of popular, and I don't know if it's still popular. I'm not really good with all that stuff, but you don't have to disguise your voice. You don't have to filter your words. I am going to try to be careful with the words that I say, just because I want to be responsible with my platform. However, I do want to just put it out there that I am going to say things like, I wish I was diagnosed with a terminal illness so I could rest. And the truth of the matter is, that's not even true rest. So I think too, there has to be some time taken to define what rest is for each of us, and how we are going to implement that into our lives, and how that is going to refuel us. Yeah. So Unplugged, and I even have this little snippet. I don't know if anyone has taken any time to take a look at my website, but on my website, I do have a little, like, you know, snippet about the podcast and what I stand for. And I'm just going to read it here. I don't know. I think these first couple of episodes, I'm trying to get my feet wet and get used to this setting again. And so I'm going to share with you what it says. It says, through honesty and vulnerability, Yvette Unplugged is a deep dive into all the things life offers: womanhood, marriage, motherhood, and so much more. The day-to-day can be a challenge for all of us, but when it's paired with 4 kids, life online, and being a wife to a content creator, there's a lot to unpack. Each episode is filled with deep reflection as I walk out the balance between challenge and grace. In music, unplugging refers to an environment without production. It's the bare bones and no fluff. Yvette Unplugged embodies that same heart posture, truth with no sugarcoating. Through this podcast, my prayer is that in sharing my thoughts, you will be encouraged to keep it real, cherish the small moments, feel empowered, and embrace the perfectly imperfect. It's time to unplug, friend. And with that, I wanted to leave you guys with this huge announcement. This week, If you are a part of my email list, you know that I already announced that I have talked myself in and talked myself out of hosting a mom's retreat. And I am finally doing it, y'all. I am finally going to be hosting a mom's retreat. And I am walking in bold faith. And when I tell you bold faith, I mean bold faith, because girl, I ain't got it. I do not have it. However, I believe that I am not the only person who has felt the way that I described, who has felt like there needs to be something tragic or life altering in order for me to have an excuse to just be. Sorry, y'all. I don't know. I think the battery died on the last while I was recording, so I'm gonna just pick up wherever I am. But I am really excited to announce that I am finally hosting my first ever mom's retreat. The mom's retreat will be May 10th through the 13th. And yes, it is only for moms, and no, kids are not allowed. Husbands are not allowed. But I am inviting you to experience rest. I am inviting you to experience rest. I know what it's like to be in the hustle and bustle of raising children, of being married to an amazing husband and building a legacy for your family and working through childhood trauma while also trying to do all the things that are required of us in this thing called life. And I know how easy it is to just keep going and keep showing up for everyone else, but not showing up for ourselves. And I know how it is to feel like you cannot just take a moment and breathe. Like in this moment, when I am saying that, you might realize that you've been holding your breath. And so for a moment, I just like you to take a moment and inhale and exhale. Maybe do that a few more times while you listen to the remainder of this podcast. But sometimes we're holding our breath until the next paycheck hits the account, or we're holding our breath until the next emotional blow up happens, or we're holding our breath for God knows what. And we don't have to do that. You know, there's like a literal movie for Black women specifically called Waiting to Exhale, right? Because that is a thing. That is something that we do. We wait to exhale. And I would like to invite you to come alongside me and practice rest. Make that something that is a part of your lifestyle. And rest can look so many different ways. And, I don't know, rest could look like, for me, I know oftentimes I'll just take a moment and go sit outside in my hammock and lay there and let the sun touch my skin in the most magical way sometimes. And that little thing breathes so much life into me. There are definitely day-to-day things that we can do to implement rest into our lives, but I am inviting you to join me in May at my first ever Unplugged retreat. I am calling it the Unplugged Retreat because it's not just a time for rest, but it's also a time for connection. There will be an option to bring a friend and share a room with them. And the other option is to just have your own room, your own quiet time. But there will be plenty of opportunities for you to connect with other moms who are experiencing some of the same things you're experiencing, who need rest just as much as you need it, and who also are desiring to connect and to create deeper friendships. And so I invite you guys to attend the Unplugged retreat. Again, it's happening May 10th through the 13th in Carefree, Arizona. So we are all going to just meet in Carefree, Arizona. There will definitely be more details coming out this week on Wednesday. If you're hearing this right now and you are not signed up for my email list, I am going to go ahead. I think it's always in the show notes of the podcast, but you should definitely join my email list because I will be sending the link out to them first, so that they have first dibs. I only have 25 spots open. only 25 spots open. I do expect the spots to go fast, but who knows? We'll see how it goes. But if you are not able to attend, or you don't desire to attend, or it's not something that you feel like you need in this season, then I just ask that you would join me in prayer for those who are planning to attend, and that you would just planning that that you would just join me in praying that the Lord would go before us all, and that he would meet us there in such a way that brings us that true rest that we really need in this season of motherhood. So I just wanted to announce that. I hope that you guys will come just as you are. I hope that you would find it to be a safe space. This is hopefully the inaugural Unplugged retreat, and I am looking forward to doing many more of these. Let's speak it into existence. Like I told y'all last podcast, I am betting on me. I think I told y'all that last podcast, but I am finally stepping out in boldness and doing things that the Lord has put on my heart out of obedience. I think that it's time. It's beyond time. So that is that. All right. So lastly, I wanted to, I always like to leave you guys with a little bit of an encouragement, because again, you don't come here for answers or none of that. It's just us. We're doing life together. Let's call it like it is. We're doing life together. And I would just like to encourage you guys in your journey. I think that a lot of times people are like, I don't know, they ask me questions in a way that makes me feel like they think that I got it all together. And maybe they know I don't have it all together. Maybe that's something that makes people come closer to me. I don't know. But my life scripture has come to be John, in the full chapter of 15, John 15. But today I'm going to read to you guys John chapter 15, verse 5. It says, "I am the vine, you are the branches. The one who remains in me and I in him produces much fruit, but you can do nothing without me." And so what I want to encourage you guys with, or what the encouragement I want to leave you guys with today, is that you can do nothing without God. You can do nothing without him. He is the vine and you are the branch. And the only way that the branch produces fruit is if it is attached to the vine, the true source of nutrients and all the things necessary in order to produce fruit. And so I think sometimes we get distracted by our own strength, that we forget who the actual person with the strength is, who the actual person with the power to produce fruit is. And so if you feel like you're in a season of drought, if you feel like you're in a season where you're not producing much fruit, then you might want to evaluate your attachments. And so as I leave you today, I would just like to encourage you to draw near to the Lord, whatever that looks like. It could look like an abundance of prayer. Maybe you have time to just be all up in your scripture. I'm not saying not to be all up in your scripture, but I do know that there are some seasons when we don't make time. Let's put it that way. We don't make time for that. And so the kids and I the other day were listening to scripture via the Bible app. That is something new to us, but I also feel like that is something that can be done too. Like maybe instead of listening to a book one day, you actually put it on the Bible app for a few hours in a chapter that you want to read. I don't know. The Bible Recap app is actually a pretty cool app. I have not done it in its entirety, but I do know that it has been a powerful tool for a lot of people. So, all right, y'all. I'm done. I hope that you find some encouragement in that. I hope that as you are tidying up, as you are finishing up those dishes, or as you are nearing the end of your walk, as you are ending the near of your commute, whatever it is that you are doing in this moment, I want you to know that I appreciate you for giving me a moment of your time and your listening ear. I hope that you found some encouragement in today's episode, and I look forward to connecting with you again next week. For now, keep on keeping on, y'all.